Hola. And thank you all for joining us. I just want to first and foremost say the people that are already watching, please bear with me for like 30 seconds because I have to show Brad something. This is part of our cold opening. And I've wanted to show him this since yesterday, but I was like, I'll just do it in our live. It is not inappropriate.
Okay,
It
thank God.
is it is something that he will enjoy. You guys might not, but I promise it won't take long. And there it is. There's the cold opening, the dog. Okay. Let me get this over with. Let me share my screen. I thought this was pretty wild. And I pulled this one out specifically. Have you ever seen this? Steph's top 30 three-pointers. This is wild.
Scotty Brooks 3 times won the Western Conference Finals and took him to the NBA Finals in 2012 with Oklahoma City.
Todd trying to stay with Stephen. Oh, no. Faked him out and hit a three.
That's
Nice.
Now you see him, now you don't.
Now, how many people lose a defender?
Like, I watched his top 30, and some of the shots, like, I don't know how, like, some of them had such crazy arc that I'm like, how are you doing this?
This is actually a really good cold open into this episode because I'm going to bring him up while we talk about burnout. And then
Good.
I actually have something related to him for our leadership development meeting for Macros Inc. next week or the week after, whenever it is. So he's going to be featured in Macros Inc. a lot this week and next week.
Do you think, I mean, you regard him as the greatest shooter of all time, right?
100%. I would also make the case that he may be the greatest basketball player of all time.
Wow. That's a claim.
We can talk about that in detail later, but I think there's a case to be made there.
Well, thank you all for permitting me to show Brad the Steph Curry highlight. This episode should be pretty good. It's about motivation and burnout and fatigue, and specifically, how do I avoid those things? Well, not how do I avoid motivation, but motivation isn't always going to be there. It's an emotion that fades. And so it begs the question, what do we do when we're not feeling motivated? What do I do when I'm feeling burnt out or I'm fatigued? And how do I potentially avoid these things? And let's see, I think it was last year, you did a topic on this at our company meetup in Chicago on avoiding those things, or like what do I do if I'm feeling that way? So I thought that was really good. And there's probably some things that I'm sure you can pull from what you talked about back then and put it into this episode. But yeah, this is a real thing for people, and it's a real struggle, and we've all been there, and we've all had those days where we don't feel motivated, but you got to pick yourself up and keep going. So we're going to dive into how to do all that, and hopefully give you guys some good insights and yeah. So let's just get right to it. The probably the if we define a couple of let's just define motivation. That is, I put it as that's the spark that gets you started, but it's not the fuel that keeps you going, right? Because you're not going to feel motivated the same way you did 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks later as you did when you said, I'm going to do this. So, and then burnout, that is a chronic, cumulative mental drain from either feeling stressed or overloaded. And then I would say fatigue is different. Fatigue, I sort of think as a physical or mental tiredness. It could be a one-day thing. It could be acute, or it could be chronic. It's not always necessarily related to burnout. So that's how I define those things. But do you agree with those? How do you define those three terms?
Of motivation and burnout?
Yeah, motivation, burnout, fatigue. Do you define those similarly? What do those terms mean to you? Because I think that'll probably give us insight into, where we're going with this and some of your solutions and what we talk about.
I mean, I think they're all different motivation states, right? And they're all different emotional states. And you can like put definitions on them and like if we talk about like burnout, it's basically a state of exhaustion, whether it's like emotional, physical, mental. Like burnout is basically a state of exhaustion that usually comes from like prolonged excessive stress, right? Motivation is kind of the feeling of having the energy and the drive to do something. And so, probably what we're going to talk about today is a little bit of awareness around those feelings, what they actually mean, and how to honestly assess them. And I think just one of the things to start this episode out is we're probably going to offer you various perspectives on these different concepts, right? One of the fallacies or traps I think people get into is they assume that these things, motivation, burnout, stress, whatever, are singular things that should be experienced and thought about the same by everybody at all times. And in reality, there's different ways to look at and think about and feel and experience motivation, burnout, stress, etc. And so today, hopefully, we're going to get a chance to just talk about various perspectives on all of those things.
Would you say motivation comes from, that dopamine hit that we've talked about that, where it's like I'll give you an example. You can go to YouTube and find any of these short motivational videos, right? And they feel good and they're like, hell yeah, man, let's I want to go do something. But that's like all the video did was it kind of got you hyped up and you feel good for a second, but it doesn't last long, right? So what is motivation at its core? To me, that is more of it's a feeling, it's it's an emotion, which underlying that you could say is a chemical, a neurotransmitter. Like it's a chemical signal at its core, right? So that's why it's not always there. But yeah, that's kind of, I don't know. Is that, does that make sense? Or am I rambling? I just
think
feel like it's a temporary, it's that dopamine hit, right? And we feel good for a second and that's it. Like that's what I feel like motivation is.
I mean, dopamine is both a cause and effect of motivation, right? You experience some sort of dopamine hit from a motivational video. So you have motivation to do something.
Yeah.
You are motivated to do something, so you get the dopamine hit, right? It's like, why do I have the motivation to gamble? It's because I want the dopamine hit of winning. So it's like, it's the same. It happens on both sides of the cause and effect. And so the way that I think about motivation, like it's sort of defined in the literature as like the driving force behind our actions and like the reason why we behave in certain ways. Now, I actually don't think that's correct.
I was going to say I don't think that's true,
because we make a lot of decisions subconsciously / unconsciously.
Exactly.
And a lot of our behaviors and actions are kind of just like pattern loops. Like we just do a thing because we do a thing. And so I think it's a little bit more nuanced than that. And I think the hard part is, in fact, I think the largest argument I ever got into on Facebook was about motivation because it was somebody who was a psychologist and was like, everything you're saying about motivation is wrong. And I was like, well, maybe by the textbook, but like real life's a little bit different than that. And so I think sometimes it's important to understand that motivation is a part of behaviors. It is not the driving force behind all behaviors. And so just having a little bit of the ability to step back and look at it from that perspective, I think is helpful. Now, motivation is a part of our decision-making, but it is not the only part of our decision-making.
Yeah. So this to me, and I feel like in this episode, I don't know that I'm going to be much of a help on some of this, because my advice, and this is, well, like my advice to myself and how I handle it is, like this week, I have a ton of stuff to do. Like there's a lot of stuff on my Monday board where I was like, I got to get this done, this done, this done. But I'm not always like chomping at the bit to do it, like, right? Like I'm not like, it's not always like, yeah, I can't wait to do this. I just got to get it done. So I'm just like, whatever. Like today, I don't feel good. Like I got almost no sleep last night. My throat is killing me. I think I might be sick with something. So I'm tired, but I'm sitting here like, well, whatever. I got to get it done. Like so, I just do it, and the motivation's not there. So to me, my advice or suggestion, which I know is not helpful to people all the time, is just do it anyway. But that's not. It's easier said than done, right? Like
Yeah, I mean, I think
that's
there's
probably not good advice.
the thing is, I don't think it's bad advice either. I think what happens is people fail to realize that you can game the system a little bit regarding motivation. Like we know it's a little bit of a circular pattern / feed forward pattern, right? In both directions. Like if you are motivated, if you feel motivated and you do something, you feel good about it. So then you're motivated to do it again. On the other side, if you're not motivated and you don't do something, then you're not motivated because you didn't get the result. So you don't get the feedback loop. Now, here's where like your perspective, I think, can be helpful. And I want to put a little context to this. I think there's actually people who are wired such that in order for them to kind of get the activating energy to do something, they have to have some level of motivation to make something happen. Like I think we're all just wired a little bit differently. And then I think there's some people who can do a thing because they have to do a thing regardless of how they feel. And I think we all fall somewhere in that spectrum. But here's what I try to tell people, and this was conversations I had with clients a lot of times. We know that motivation, like the feeling of motivation, is like transient. Sometimes you feel motivated, sometimes you don't. It's fickle, like it's there and then it's gone. And when you think about it from that perspective and you understand that sometimes the behavior itself actually triggers the feelings of motivation, it's a little bit of like, if you know this, just game it. So when you are feeling motivated, just do it. Like stop whatever else you're doing and go do it if you have that ability, right? It's not like if you want to go to the gym at 3:00 in the afternoon and you're in the middle of a work meeting, like you can't just skip your work meeting and go to the gym. But like whenever you're feeling motivated to do something, do it. The other side is if you can just understand and pay attention to the fact that there are times when the feeling may not be there, but if you put the systems in place to do it regardless, you can actually elicit the feeling of being motivated by doing the action. And so it's a little bit of like understand the game that you're actually playing with your own brain and figure out how you can juice that out of the decisions you make.
Definitely. One thing that I have done over the years and really come to enjoy is after a long day of doing a lot of stuff, getting a lot of stuff done, you kind of grow to like this feeling of, damn, it was a tough day, like, but I worked as hard as I could. I feel like I got a good amount of work done. Like when you are tired at the end of the day, it kind of becomes, at least for me, enjoyable because I feel good about it. And that sort of, it's not always something you realize in the moment. So you can kind of the reward becomes, I know I don't feel motivated to do this right now, but I'm going to be happy that later that I did it. It's like the same thing as going to the gym. Like I've never regretted a workout in the gym. Like I've wanted to like not go, but afterward I'm like, man, I'm glad I worked out. Right? Like I put in the work. Um, the other point I wanted to make is this: when people are trying to lose weight, and people in our group and people watching this, like, let's be honest, that's most people's goal. 90% of people probably want to lose weight. You have some people that want to stay lean, you have some people that want to build muscle, but for the most part, it's the weight loss. And I think what a lot of people there's a point beyond which a lot of people fail to even get to, and that is they they don't see any results. So like some people just need that short term like they just need a short term win. They just need to see that their efforts are worth it. So then all of a sudden, holy cow, it's working. And now I feel motivated. And then that fuels me to keep going. And so I keep going and I become more disciplined with my habits and behaviors. And it just spirals from there. But the issue seems to be a lot of people can't quite get to that point where it starts to spiral, right? It's that first week, 2 weeks where, yeah, you're going to wonder if this is even worth it. You're going to wonder, is this going to work? And the motivation isn't going to be there. But if you can just power through it and get to that first point where you wake up one day and you're like, my weight's down. Sweet. Now I feel good. And it can snowball from there, right? But you have to get, a lot of people have to get to that point where they see the fruits of their labor before they can start to then, before the momentum really starts to build. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people fail to get to that point.
I think this is where the concept and actual practice of mindfulness is really helpful. This reminds me of a conversation I was having with a client 10 years ago or something like that. I don't know. Everything before 2020 is basically the same time frame. Like 1988 from when I was born until January of 2020 is all the same time period, and then everything after is all the same time period. Like I just don't.
2010 was 15 years ago. That sounds ridiculous to me. Like, doesn't that sound insane? I know. Anyways, I'm with you.
Okay, so I was having this conversation with a client, and they were like, I don't know why, but I don't feel motivated every day to do stuff. And even within a given day, like my motivation to like go to the gym and eat well and do all these things like fluctuates day to day. I said, okay, let's take a pause in this conversation. Let's pick this back up next week. But I'm not ignoring you. What I want you to do is I want you to pay attention to all your other emotions this week besides just motivation. Like I want you to tell me how happy you feel day to day and within a given day. I want you to tell me how frustrated you feel day to day and within a day. I want you to tell me how sad you feel within a day and day to day. And so she came back and she was like, yeah, I mean, like there was days where like I woke up pretty happy and then by lunch I was pretty sad and then at dinner I was pretty happy. And there were days where I was like way more frustrated than others. And I said, okay, so would you say like motivation, sadness, happiness, frustration are all sort of similar feelings in the fact that like they're just emotions, right? They are how you're feeling about yourself within the world and what you're doing. She's like, I'd say that's fair. I'm like, is it reasonable to just assume and say that you're going to experience the feeling and emotions of motivation similarly to all your other emotions? She's like, yes. And I was like, okay, well then is it fair to say that that's just normal? Like they're going to go up and down. And so what's better is instead of like being upset about the emotions that you're feeling, maybe just pay attention to them, like be mindful of them and why they're there and the fact that they do come and go, and try to work on like, how do I embrace those and how do I try to understand how I'm interacting with the world as I experience those? And I think that's one of the interesting things. I think people assume that they should have high levels of motivation all the time. And that's just not the way our brain works. Like I don't know anybody who has had a high level of motivation all day, every day for their entire life. Like if you even talk about like the elite of the elite, they're not there.
Yeah, they got off days. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, they have like within a given hour, right? Within a workout, within XYZ, like that's just the transient nature of our brain. And just accepting like that's part of the human condition of like we're going to experience these fluctuations in different emotions and motivation. I mean, maybe psychologically, if you look at whatever the like deep field of psychology, it's not maybe an emotion. I'd have to go look it up, but like it's experienced the same way.
You know, we are the only species that has the ability to step back and objectively, as good as we can, try to assess what we're feeling, the things that
I
we're
don't think we
thinking.
know that we're the only ones that can do that.
We don't have any evidence to the contrary. Let's just say that.
Well,
But
I don't even know how you would assess that evidence because you can't talk to other animals.
well, let's just assume for now
But we
that we are the
can't.
only. Well, let's assume we are one of very few species that can step back and do exactly what you're talking about. Because I think you hit the nail on the head with that, and it doesn't. That goes for like everything in life. Like we can always step back and be like, all right, I just had this thought. I don't have to go like if you can just step back and observe your thoughts, feelings, emotions, that is the awareness that you're talking about. And then you can like consciously choose to behave or believe differently about it. Now that doesn't mean it's always easy. Sometimes you just won't want to do that, but the ability is there. And so like being able to do that for anything is extremely powerful and is a super good tool. So I think I love that point. I just think I think it's a super good point where, yeah, when you can develop that awareness and choose to do something or think of something differently, then you use that to your advantage. Yeah, it's just something you can apply to anything. So what where do you want to go next? Because what I want to do is, unless you had anything to cover, I kind of want to dive into some of the things that you had talked about in the meeting last year in our company meetup in Chicago, right? Like suggestions on how do I approach these things when motivation's low. What can I do? How do I like recognize? Because part of what you were saying was just recognizing. All right, I'm starting to feel that burnout feeling. I'm starting to feel fatigue. Like, so half the battle is recognizing when you're getting there and then taking steps to like, what to do from there. So that's kind of where I'd like to go. Did you have anything you want to discuss first?
I mean, yeah, let's transition to the conversation that surrounds burnout a little bit. Because I think we hear this from clients. They're like, hey, I've been dieting for 6 months. I've been dieting for a year. I've been dieting for 2
Yeah.
years. And I'm feeling
Yeah.
burnt out on tracking my macros.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's totally cool. Yeah. And but before we do that, I think the thing that I want to emphasize is nobody expects, at least I don't, nobody that I know expects you to be able to track your macros forever, expects you to be able to diet in one phase forever. In fact, when you see these, and let's call this out too, let's call it the fact that when you see these amazing transformations of someone who was really overweight before and now they look totally different, that didn't happen all at once. I guarantee it didn't happen all at once. It's like that probably took potentially several years, a lot of learning, a lot of pain, a lot of crying and frustration. Like it's a hell of a battle to get there, right? Like I just want to call that out and say that's you're going to have those many periods where you're like, man, I don't want to do this right now. Cool, it's all good. You're not going to get it in one swoop.
Yeah. So I think let's just start this conversation with one of my views of the world is there are a lot of different perspectives you can have about things, and some of them may be factually true about the world, and some may be helpful, and some may be true and helpful, and some may be not true and helpful, and some may be true and not helpful, if that makes sense.
No,
And
can
so,
you repeat that part?
And so one of the things that I was thinking about a couple of years ago, I was just thinking about the concept of burnout. And I started to think like, of the people who are, and this was really in the context of like clients saying like, hey, I don't want to do this forever, right? Like, how do I work out for the next 30 years of my life? How do I track my food or pay attention to my nutrition for the next 30 years of my life? Like, how do I avoid getting burnt out on doing that? And it got me thinking, it was like, one, I feel like people maybe don't understand what burnout actually is. And two, I think sometimes they don't think about it the right way. Now, I'm not saying burnout's not a thing. And I'm not saying like, people who work like 18 hours a day in like the emergency department and they just see all sorts of crazy stuff, like they get burnout. Like that's a little bit different than what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is like, I was thinking about, okay, you've got people like Warren Buffett who have been investors for now 70, 80 years, and they do the same thing every day for 80 years. And it's boring. They look at balance sheets, they look at profit and loss statements, they have conversations, and then they maybe make some bets on money. Taylor Swift, she does the same concert over and over, travels around the world, and literally does the same thing every day. Steph Curry shoots the same shots 1,000 times a day, every day for 25 years. Neurosurgeons, most of like the top neurosurgeons do like the same procedure 12 to 16 hours a day for 40 years, like the same procedure. Like they go in and they clip an aneurysm, like over and over. And so why do those people continue to do it and not get burnt out? I think it comes down to the perspective. right? And I think it comes down to there's a little bit of a trade-off of excellence requires repetition for a long period of time. Success requires repetition for a long period of time. And the difference between like feeling some level of stress and burnout is the feeling of like hopelessness. Like there's no end, or there's no resolution, or there's no way out. And so I think like if I'm thinking about this from a health fitness perspective, is it burnout or is it boredom?
Well, also, how much of it is, we talked about this in one of the last episodes, fear of loss, right? I'm continuing to do what I'm doing all the time because what would I do otherwise? So I'll just it sounds like I might as well just keep doing what I'm doing because the alternative is maybe scarier.
Yeah. And so part of the talk I gave last year was a series of like questions for people to ask themselves to like do a true accounting and self-assessment of, am I burning out and am I thinking about it the right way? And the questions were, one, is repetition hopeless? Right? Like, is doing reps of the same thing over and over hopeless, or am I getting better? Right? If you're going to the gym every day and you're doing squatting, deadlifting, bench pressing, running, whatever, like in order to get better, you have to do repetitions, right? And so it's really just the matter of, can I continue to do the reps and get a little bit better, right? It's like, why does Steph Curry shoot 1,000 shots, 2,000 shots a day every day for 25 years? It's specifically so that, hey, maybe if I shoot 1,000,000 shots, I get 2% better. So I have a 2% higher likely chance of making the game-winning shot in the NBA Finals. Like, there is a goal attached to it, right? Same thing with like the gym or tracking nutrition is, if my goal is X, is the repetition of making my meals, going to the gym, setting my alarm, is this increasing the likelihood that I achieve my goal by any percentage? I think if you can take that perspective and be like, are the reps I'm doing increasing my likelihood of succeeding? I think that helps. Two is the outcome or the process the goal? And I think people have to be really honest about that question with themselves. I think we always talk about, oh, hey, fall in love with the process, etc. But I think you also have to try to index to the outcome. I think if you get in the mindset of, oh, I'm just doing it for the process, you start to lose like, why am I doing this in the first place?
Correct.
Especially when we talk about like health fitness goals. It's usually how I look, how I feel, etc. And so you always have to keep the outcome in mind of why you're doing something.
Yeah, that's a good point.
The third question is this actually burnout, or is this just a sticking point? Like, is this the first time I'm experiencing true resistance? Hey, maybe the first 30 pounds I lost was super easy. And now it's like, hey, shoot, this is the first time I like have a 3-week stall. Like, I'm not seeing progress, right? And I think a lot of times we don't do a good job of assessing, hey, I'm going through a stressful couple of weeks and I'm not seeing progress. Is that burnout or is that a sticking point? The fourth is, what is your time horizon? One of the reasons that I've seen people really experience burnout, and I'm going to move this more into like it applies to health and fitness stuff, but it also applies like professionally, is they have a warped perspective of how long it's going to take. Now, warped not in the negative context, like they just don't have a realistic expectation of how long it's going to take, right? When you see stories of, hey, these guys built Instagram in 6 months in their garage and Facebook bought it for $1 billion. Hey, this person, went from 25% body fat to 6% body fat and 12-pack abs in 60 days. You see the outliers and you assume that that's going to be your time horizon. The reality is that's not most people, right? I think about like here at Macros Inc., like the business we're in. I mean, we're in a year, realistically, 8
or 9, yeah.
And like, should we have, gone to X revenue and sold for X dollars and retired on a beach with private yachts and whatever? Like, No. We still have decades of work we have to do before we are who we should be, right? And so having the appropriate time horizon, I think, is really helpful. Because if you get in your head like, hey, I should have been here by 6 months, and it's 6 years in and you're not there, of course you're going to have, like, you're going to start to feel hopeless. You're going to be like, oh my God, I'm not where I'm supposed to be. But who said you're supposed to be there at that time frame? And then the last piece is, are you building competence? And when we talk about like health and fitness stuff, competence usually centers around your belief in yourself that you can make the decisions that you want to make. And so I think, one of the things that I think about, and I think I'm going to see if I can pull up this chart that I showed, is as we do more and more of something, we have this self-expectation of I should be getting better and better and better, right? However, if you're not building the skills and the competence over time, you're going to have a mismatch between what you think you should be able to do and what you're actually able to do, right? This is like where the fable of like Milo and the bull, right? Milo's young. He starts out carrying his cow every day, and every day he carries it, and the cow gets a little bit heavier every day, but he's like, every day it's 1 more pound, so we can handle 1 more pound. This is where like
you don't notice it. Yeah.
the fable of like progressive overload, right? Now imagine if you were Milo and you just watch the cow get bigger every day, and then 3 years in, you decided to pick the cow up. You wouldn't, right? And so this was one of the graphs I shared. I'll see if I can share it here. When I gave that presentation of like, your risk of burnout happens, or it goes up when, as time goes on, you have higher expectations of yourself, but you don't continue to develop competence. If you continue to develop more competence around what you're doing as time goes by, you're going to be less likely to burn out because you're going to be able to meet whatever the next challenge is. And so you're going to have less of a feeling of like hopelessness. All right, that's my 14-minute soapbox. So I think I should probably let you talk at this point.
Well, actually, no, what I was going to say was when you talked about the time frame, right? The time expectation. One of the points I wanted to make was we have a warped idea of how long something should take, because we as outsiders, when we look at someone that we consider successful, we only see the outcome. We didn't see their process. So to us, it looks like they became an overnight success, but it probably took them a long time, and we didn't see the blood, sweat, and tears that they had to go through, right? So we have this fallacy of judging ourselves based on what we think a realistic time frame is, and that realistic time frame that we think is based on not being able to see the process someone else went through. I think of somebody mentioned crumble cookies. Do you guys have crumble cookies in I'm assuming you do, Spokane or wherever?
We might. Okay. I don't know. Let me see.
The reason I bring them up is
apparently we do. I have never been.
So they get brought up in the group once in a while, but the reason I chose them is they started in it might have been like 2015, 2016 or something like that, as one store. Actually, they're in Oregon, so not far from you. I think it was Oregon. Either way, it was like two cousins that started a store, and now they have like stores all across the United States. I think they're in Canada too. So like they've really exploded, and it seems like a short time frame, but I guarantee there was a ton of stress and again, blood, sweat, and tears that went into getting that to where it is now. But as outsiders like us, all we see is, holy crap, there's a bunch of crumble stores now. Yeah. Right. So this idea of how long something should take us is warped. So
yeah, I mean, I was thinking about this today. I mean, obviously we've been running Macros Inc. for 8 years. And today we were in an ad meeting, and we were talking about like the next iteration of ads, and I was just thinking to myself, we're going to have to do this every week for the next 3 decades. Like, I'm never just going to make an ad and be done. Like, you're going to always be working on it. And
Yeah.
I just think that's such an important perspective for people to have. And so as we kind of move from talking about a little bit of like perspective and what burnout may or may not be and how we should think about it, I think there are some strategies that I want to kind of go through. And so this is, when I gave this presentation last year, I broke it into like work and life-based strategies. And I think this will apply to like people listening in their professional lives, but also like regarding like health, fitness, weight loss, etc. Because a lot of times the burnout that we experience in like certain aspects of our lives is not just related to that thing, right? Like, imagine if you had no other responsibilities and all you had to think about was your nutrition and your exercise. Like, you'd probably never really feel burnout. You might feel bored at times, but it wouldn't really feel burnout. What happens is you have such high levels of stress from everywhere else that the amount of time and energy you can put into this starts to drop, and then you don't make progress, and so you feel hopeless. And so when we talk about like from a professional perspective, how can you adjust your work life when you're feeling burnt out, either in work or anything else, is, one, change your time horizon, right? So whether this is like how long you think it should take you to advance in your career, how long you think it should take for you to reach your health, wellness, fitness, weight loss goals, like just give yourself a more appropriate time horizon. 2 is sometimes we just need to recharge our batteries. I think one of the really...
What does that mean to you? I'm curious because I agree with you, but that right there, recharge your batteries obviously means something different to everybody. Just curious, what would that mean for you?
Well, I mean, so I think before I go there, in the United States, we have a lot of great things about our culture. One of the things that's not great is taking time for ourselves to like recharge is so low on the priority list. It's like not even there, right? I think we've had some people from like other countries who've come to work for us, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I've got 8 weeks of vacation planned," and I'm like, "What?" And they're like, "What do you mean, what?" Like it's such a different thing. So I think I think this looks different for everybody, right? Sometimes it means taking a vacation. Sometimes it means spending more time in your life doing things you enjoy doing. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. But it's just like, be intentional about finding ways to like de-stress and recharge your batteries. The third is ask for help. There's no shame if you're feeling like, hey, I'm stuck, I'm feeling stressed, I feel a level of hopelessness towards the specific goals I have that I'm feeling burnout. Like, ask for help. If you're like spinning your wheels and you're not losing weight, or you're not enjoying the gym, or you feel like you're just not making any progress, like just ask for help. You could hire a coach. That'd be great. We would love it. Or you can just like go to the Facebook group, ask questions. If you're ever feeling stuck or you're feeling like burnout, just ask. We are more than happy to help. A lot of times the burnout feeling comes from a lack of clarity. Like, you have too many options and you don't know what to choose, or you feel like you don't have any options, so you don't have any control. And then the last one is like, right size your workload. Like, take some time to look at, do you have way too much on your plate? So now let's kind of transition to life-based. This is a piece of advice that I really need to follow myself, but live your life. I think a lot of times we get so wrapped up in like a specific outcome that we forget that part of life is living. And I think a lot of the feelings of burnout come from being so wrapped up in a single thing that we forget about the rest of our life. Like, going to the gym and eating well is awesome. Weight loss is awesome. What's also awesome is enjoying the minutes you're on this planet, because those are the only ones you get. So if you like fishing, if you like hiking, if you like spending time with your family, if you enjoy going to happy hour, like, find ways to live your life a little bit, especially if you're kind of starting to feel like burnout. 2 is prioritize what matters. What I have found is it's very easy for me to just get in the habit of doing the things that I need to do without asking myself, do I really need to do these things? Like, do I have my priorities straight? I think a lot of times we just let them lapse. Like, we just live life and then we look up and we're like, oh, I haven't prioritized a single thing that matters this week. Number 3 is simplify your life. I was having this conversation with a guy who used to work for me in a separate business, and he was going through there's just a lot going on. And this was in the car business, and he was looking to buy a project car. And I was like, dude, why are you doing this? He's like, well, because it'll be like something fun for me to do in my free time. I'm like, what free time? He's like, well, like eventually I'll have free time. I'm like, you have so much going on. If I were you, I would sell every single thing I own and like cut out all the people in your life that are causing all these issues. And I would just like simplify your life. Like, stop doing all this stuff in your free time and like just like get your time back and like get your mental clarity back. And I think this is one of the things that I've tried to be really diligent about. You know, like as you get older and you become an adult, like all these things start to like be attractive. You're like, oh, I want to take this big vacation. I want to buy this boat. I want to buy this classic car. I want to put my kid in private school. Like I want to do all these things. So what ends up happening is your like attention and energy gets so fragmented of all these things you have to manage that you just forget like, what is it that matters? And so I think if you can find ways to simplify your life when possible, it's really helpful.
Well, the guy that I just real quick, one of the things that you said that he said was, well, eventually I'll have time. It's important to me to point out because, and I've been guilty of it too, and I see it all the time, is like, what do you mean by that? Do you think life is just going to magically sort itself out and give you free time? Like, when do you think that's going to happen and how? And the reality is that's not going to happen. And the reality is you need to make that happen. Like when you have free
you have
time,
to
it's up
make
you.
the time.
Right,
And a lot of
exactly.
times you make the time by simplifying your life.
Exactly. Yep. No, that's exactly it. So don't get caught up in this idea that, well, one day I'll have free time. Well, if you just keep putting it off and assuming you're going to, then you never will. You have to actually make that free time. So
Yeah.
just a point that we get caught up in.
The fourth one is like seek health first. It's really hard to like keep your life together and avoid the feeling of like being overly stressed and burnt out if you have not prioritized how you feel. Like your brain and the status of your brain is usually a direct reflection of the status of your body. And vice versa. Your body will be a direct reflection of how your brain feels. And if you want the greatest return on investment in your quality of life, live in a healthy body. I think that's one of the.
And eat well. Yep.
And even if it's not perfect, any step in the right direction is like a compound return on your time. And then the last one is be vocal. Like it is totally okay and acceptable and should be applauded if you tell people what matters to you and you put boundaries around what's important. Like if you've had a really hectic week at work and you really want to get to the gym and it's Friday at 6:00 and your friends invite you to happy hour, you can just say, dude, I need to go to the gym because I need to be a better person on Monday than I am today. Like, that's great. Your friends are probably going to actually be like, you know what? Good for him. And if they don't, they shouldn't be your friends.
I was going to say, unless it's your wife and she invites you to have lunch with her yesterday around 11:30 and you text her back saying, I can't because I got to get this work done. And then she's mad at you. That totally didn't happen to me.
Tell her to take it up with the boss.
But she's like, oh, yeah.
I mean, those are things you could plan ahead if they were prioritized.
Yeah, that's true.
Mandy, don't hurt me.
She wasn't actually mad. She was just like, okay, all right. Like I could tell she was sad, but whatever. I'll make it up to her.
So those are some of my strategies.
Yeah, that's really good, and I'm glad you shared that. And I suspected you would. I figured you'd still have some of those slides that you that you had last time. But I think those are just really good points, and I think we can all look at some of those, be like, I mean, I know as you were sharing that again, I'm thinking, I need to get better at that one. I need to get better at that one. Like it's they're good reminders. And I had another thought. I just can't. I have a lot of thoughts that are hard for me to capture, but a lot of good points you bring up. So, what? Yeah, go ahead. I just
Yeah, and here's
this
just
this
like
is a great slide.
4 practical things that you can do today to kind of like help you build. I always think about like building tools in my life, right? Your mental status is just going to change all day, every day. Like you're going to feel some level of burnout on that scale of 0 to 100 at some point at any given day. Like me on a given day, I go from 0 to 100 in seconds. And then I try to go back to 0 as quick as possible. So I always think about like building toolkits. And so here are things that you can do that I think are really helpful. One is, we kind of talked about being excellent and burnout. It's just like when you think about your goals and you turn it into a process, like how do you practice being excellent daily? And so when you think about, I'm engaging in behaviors that I feel burnt out about, am I actually burning out or am I just trying to practice excellence? And just like having that mindset can be really helpful. 2 is this is about like setting appropriate time horizons. Like what does that mean within a year, 5 years, 10 years? And like just being totally honest with yourself, right? If you have about 50, 60 pounds to lose, trying to get 6-pack abs in 6 months, probably not the appropriate time horizon. A year, 5 years, 10 years, much more appropriate. So just like trying to set down those goals in appropriate time horizons. 3 is write down the things that might make you feel hopeless. So like when I think about like, okay, let's just take a business perspective. Like what would it look like for me to experience burnout from the sense of hopelessness? And start to identify those things so then I can like have strategies to mitigate them, right? If it's like, hey, I don't feel in control of sales at all and that makes me feel hopeless. It's like, okay, well then what actions can I take that get rid of that feeling? And then 4 is kind of go back to those items we gave for both work and life strategies and like write them down and look at them and be like, here are the things that I'm going to do when I start to feel like burnout's coming. Like, hey, when I start to feel burnout, I'm going to take a day off and go do something I really enjoy. Hey, I'm starting to feel burnout. I'm going to simplify my life. Hey, I'm starting to feel burnout. I'm going to talk to somebody about it. Hey, I'm starting to feel burnout. I'm going to reprioritize my work week and my life so I actually have time to do the things that I want to do.
Do you ever, let me ask you a question. Do you ever, when you find yourself stressed out, overwhelmed, you're like, there's a ton of work I got to get done. One of my strategies or coping mechanisms, and this may be foolish, it may be the stupidest thing ever, or maybe it's wise. But I always think like, I always take a step back and I'm like, it's going to be okay. And I'll figure it out and I'll get it done. And the reason I can say that is because if I look at things in the past, I've been stressed many times before. There have been many times I wasn't sure how I was going to do A, B, or C. But like, they eventually got done. We eventually did it. So do you ever take that approach where you're just like, I'm stressing about it, but you know what? Like, I'll figure it out. Like, I just got to figure it out. Like,
yeah,
it's as
I
simple as
also
that. Like, it's simplified, but like, I'm just like, I'll figure it out. And I chalk it up to something as simple as that.
I also just think like, fortunately, in the things that we do for jobs, no one's gonna die.
That's a good perspective.
Like,
Compare it to the extreme. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, like I feel fortunate that I don't go into work every day and like people don't die.
Well, actually, because I mean, think about doctors that perform surgeries. They put people at risk of
And
if I do one wrong thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a whole
If I do one
different.
wrong thing, somebody could be totally brain dead. Right. With mine, like it's crazy.
And when we talk about like true burnout and things like that, that's a totally different conversation. Like when you talk about like ER physicians, trauma surgeons, like that's a totally different black box of psychology that I can't even begin to try to unravel.
You know what though? Honestly, 5 to 10 years, physicians are just going to be robots anyway, so we're not going to have to worry about that.
No.
Dude, they're going to have AI.
Radiologists will probably not be there, but like the rest of medicine won't be there.
Won't be there. You just said. You mean will be there?
No, won't be there. Radiologists will be replaced, but like everybody else won't.
I don't know, man. I think it's only a matter of time you're going to have robots performing brain surgery.
Okay, I'm going to pose this question to you. We have enough data on autonomous driving cars that they are orders of magnitude safer than humans.
Yeah.
But we legally do not allow all cars to be autonomous yet, right?
So you're saying that this is a matter of red tape.
This is a matter of what is humanity willing to take on in terms of risk that we have outsourced from humans to everything else? Like,
yeah,
who are you going to blame
I
when the code in a robot goes bad and someone dies?
Yeah.
Like, we're just, even though the math would make sense that we should do that, we won't do it because, like, that's just, we're emotional beings. We're wired like that.
What you're saying is that we would have the technology and ability to do it, but actually implementing it and doing it is a whole different thing.
That is the problem with all things. Like, we know all of the things you need to do to reduce your risk of most chronic diseases to really low. Like, we know, but we cannot apply it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Sorry, I interrupted with something, but I think you were going to go off to discuss something else, but then I brought up AI.
Oh, I was just going to say, whenever I feel like life's going to hell in a handbasket, I just go to the basketball court and just shoot baskets by myself.
Just shoot?
Yep. So that solves all problems.
I want to read something to you real quick, though. This is from...
Do we have any questions or comments either that people want us to tackle before we sign off here?
We haven't gotten any, but if anybody, I mean, we like to answer questions, so please put one in the comments section if you do have one. But I was going to read this to you, though. 2026, scientific discovery goes exponential. AI starts running experiments, not just helping, leading. Models generate hypotheses, design experiments, and simulate outcomes. Research cycles that used to take years collapse into days. Breakthroughs in medicine, physics, materials everywhere. The scientific method gets a software update. Do you find that more plausible?
In what field?
I didn't get that nuanced with it, but let's say, what about the work you used to do?
I mean, the problem is there's still so much work that you have to like manually do.
But you don't think, but surely AI can accelerate at the very least some of that work, no?
I mean, yes. But my question is going to be like, what is the application of that?
Yeah, and I guess that's the part we gotta
see.
We don't know.
I started reading this book. I'm gonna see if I can have it on my shelf. It must be on my other bookshelf. I think it's called The Song of the Cell, and it's like talking about how the more we understand biology at like the most deep fundamental cellular level, the more we'll be able to cure all diseases by like cellular engineering. I just don't think that's ever going to be the case.
Ever?
No, so somebody gave me this analogy. Really interesting. Let's say you grew up living in like a rural area on a mountain lake, and from childhood to age 50, like everything was awesome. All the plants were healthy, all the animals were healthy, the lake was healthy, and you woke up one day to all of the fish in the lake were dead, all of them. And you had two options to go try to figure out why all the fish were dying. One option is you take all of the fish and you sequence all of their DNA and you get every piece of information from every cell in the body of that fish. And then you re-engineer the fish from the ground up and you recreate them and you restock the lake with those fish. Or you go to another lake and you determine what changed in the environment that caused all the fish to die. And then you just restock the lake with new fish, the same fish, but you've solved the environmental problem. And it turns out it was just some river upstream from a mine was polluting the lake.
Yeah.
What's the more likely scenario to solve that problem? It's the second one. Like, it's obviously the second one, right? And like, when I think about how we're starting to, the deeper we get in the like cellular biology of the current health issues we face, I feel like the further away from the solution we're actually getting. This is coming from somebody who like did molecular biology work.
Yeah.
I don't think it's not important, because like we've cured a lot of diseases, right? Like, we have treatments for like hepatitis, we have treatments for infectious disease, like we have all these things. But there's a little bit of the like,
yeah,
I think the deeper we go, the further we get from the actual truth.
That's an interesting perspective.
It's like, when you get into an argument with somebody and after 2.5 hours, you're like, you kind of have lost the entire point of what you're talking about at all to begin with. And you guys are like, wait, what did we start arguing about?
Honestly, that's probably how people feel watching this show. That we had a point, and then at the end we just talk about something else, and people are like, "What the hell were these guys talking about?"
Yeah, I don't know. It's crazy.
But no questions yet. I'm kind of saddened by that. I will say, I thought this was a great episode. I appreciate you sharing those slides again, and I think I hope people feel like they could take something from this and apply it. Got anything else you want to add?
I would just like to confirm that the 2023 study that came out that said people who have higher levels of caffeine in their blood are more likely to have a lower risk of type 2 diabetes. So ipso facto, drink more coffee, be more awesome.
I wonder if that reduces...
I posted about this a long time ago, but it just like came up again on one of my like science news websites that I follow.
I wonder if it reduces your risk of anything cardiovascular and or like Alzheimer's or anything brain related. I would think it would have some sort of effect on that.
Yes, it does. It also reduces your risk of developing Alzheimer's and dementia. However, I am not convinced that it is cause and effect. I am maybe a little bit more convinced that it is a reflection of your otherwise habits and lifestyle.
Right. Yeah. Like a lot of things. All right. Well, that concludes this episode. I got nothing else, but I appreciate you all watching, and a huge thank you for sticking with us. We will be back next week with another topic. And for anybody that didn't catch the whole thing, I always upload this episode later. So this should be up tomorrow, and you can watch it back on our YouTube channel. So with that being said, I guess we can duck out of here. Bradley?
Let's do it.
Great episode. All right. Bye, guys.